Welcome everybody to our Digital Services Forum call. This is our bi-weekly call, and today we're going to go over transforming claims management. And for those of you that have been on ServiceNow for a while, keep in mind today's going to be more of an art of the possible. Like, what can you really do with the ServiceNow platform? So if you're not here specifically for claims, if you are, that's great. But if you're not here specifically for claims, think of this as a lesson from like end to end, what can actually happen on the platform. Because we're getting into a lot more of these, I'll call them advanced use cases. Some of the things I've seen in claims was outstanding, and I thought bringing it to this group would be a good idea, just so you can all get a picture of it. If today's your first time, and I know there are some people coming here specifically because we're doing claims today. So if today's your first time, if you could just put your name inside the chat. We like to keep a really active chat here. A lot of what comes out of this group is not only the content that we share with you and the topics we share with you, but also hooking up with all of your peers that are doing a lot of the same things. So make sure you put your name down, where you're from, and what you're here for, and ask questions on the chat so that your peers can answer, as well as some of us as we're joining in. So I'm going to hand it over to Dustin in a few minutes here. And Dustin is our Senior Industry Enterprise Architect at ServiceNow, and he specializes in this space. So he'll give you more of his background, but a very impressive background in this space. And that's part of using ServiceNow in these ways, is having experts that know the space really well. So I'm very happy to have Dustin with us here today. At the end, if there's some time, I might go into some other things that I'm doing on the instance, just so that you could see what we're working on and some of the continued work on the digital services factory that we're doing. Dustin's going to go over what is a claim, some claims management. So it'll be kind of like a 101 session. So you don't have to think you need to be an expert to understand the claims. He's going to take you through it all in a really nice way and then tie it back to some core concepts in ServiceNow. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dustin, and then I will, like I said, if there's time at the end, I'll pick it up. If there's a lot of questions from everybody, then we'll run with it. So, all yours.
For everybody joining, John, it's a privilege and an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Dustin Gannon. I have been an industry expert. I've worked across 200 digital transformations and agentic AI kind of modernizations now. And really what I have done at this industry is just seen enough of the patterns that happen in the various customers around the world, whether they be government, whether they be for-profit, whether they be an NGO or a private sector or a mutual, to kind of recommend some patterns. And the really amazing thing about working on ServiceNow is how these patterns fit into ServiceNow kind of is the story that you can copy to any problem or any industry. I like to say that every type of work on ServiceNow is kind of the same, whether it's a simple password reset or somebody who needing to take some time off through HR, or something as complicated as 4 people getting in a car accident with somebody who's really seriously hurt and us needing to go through and tow cars and manage that there. So it's more of the same, but it's not anything different. So with that being said, I'm just going to kind of give everybody a mental model here. Right. So when you look at this industry and you look at this use case, there's a tremendous amount of just complexity that exists in this space. Hundreds of systems, thousands of different tools. In many cases, these systems are not new. They're sometimes, green screen or proprietary. And what this means is it's a perfect example of how ServiceNow can come in and help in a complex or messy ecosystem. And how I like to put that together is, regardless of how complex the messy middle or the back office or the front office is, I like to think with capabilities and then apply capabilities to the problems. So what you see here are examples of some of the capabilities that are in the ServiceNow platform. And we already know and love many of these. So for example, a huge part of doing claims is putting together portals or experiences for the injured, for the beneficiaries, for the employers, for the workers. Another big part of this is just managing the paperwork and the documents. Another portion of this is summarizing or giving me a single pane of glass to work out of if I have 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 systems. Things like a mobile app or a tool that allows me to do offline transactions. Think of like a fire or a situation where we have emergency response and we might need to give that person in the ambulance or in the car a tool that works, even if the internet doesn't. And then you have other things in here about like if you have a complex transaction, say somebody lost a leg or had a serious spinal injury, or it was something that was involving a fatality. I need to find the very right person the very first time, because if you could imagine, being passed around to three, four, five different people when you have a serious injury, that's going to be incredibly frustrating. Other tools like our decision builder for automating and making low code decisions, using the platform and its knowledge articles and all the best practices to make things kind of easy to understand. Structuring how the transaction works with Playbooks. This is such a killer feature. I know a lot of the customers who installed ServiceNow prior to, say, 2022 maybe don't use this feature, but we now have over 1,000 playbooks in the entire ServiceNow catalog. It's a killer feature to show. And then just the other things, complex integrations with things like RPA or pre-built integrations with things like our spokes, or even our new workflow data fabric that is showing how you could go through and pull in data from a structured or unstructured data set is a huge part. We're going to talk about Gen AI. That's the hot topic, and it's all throughout the total platform, because anything you build on ServiceNow, it gets all the agentic and the Gen AI stuff for free. And then just understanding how work flows and where it's stuck and how to make things better. And of course, fix this in the long run. So with those capabilities, what you then end up getting to is how do you come through and ultimately structure that work so that it matches the shape of the problem. And what you can see right here, if we had like an insurance claim, which again could be somebody doing workers' comp with the state governments, it could be a private sector going through there, it could be travel insurance, it could be any type of thing. It always starts with something called a first notice of loss. From there, it's going to go through assignment tools. You're going to have paperwork that needs to get processed. You're going to need to structure that work. You're going to need to come through and support the personas with mobile apps. And you're going to need to go through and measure and manage this and improve it over time. Okay. Any questions, John? Any feedback before we dive into the software? Those are the only slides I have for today.
I think we're good so far.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into some actual software. All right. You should be seeing hello, Dustin Gannon, Solana Insurance at the top left. Everybody see that on the screen? Cool.
Yeah, just before we get into Dustin, a little bit. So on our instance, we have FSO on there. So this claims piece is on our instance, but it's not configured like Dustin's going to show you today.
Good point. So I'm showing you kind of an art of the possible configuration we did for a customer that's in the evaluation cycle. Nothing here is really anything other than kind of specialized configuration to their requirements. It uses all the greatness of FSO. It aligns to all the other functionalities like the PSDS and the sales and order management. Like we have a really clean structure for how our platform is architected. And basically, this is just another way to get to value faster. So if you like these screens in particular, they are absolutely accomplishable in any of the SKUs you buy, but you are seeing kind of the ones we specifically configured for, in this case, a workers' compensation example. But you could really do this for anyone. It just comes down to like every claims implementation has some configuration, and this is the configuration we did for this one. Okay. All right. So we actually have a lot of vignettes here. I'm going to walk us through a good chunk of these, and some of these we'll actually do live. Others of these will kind of click through to prototypes and so on. But to start any claim anywhere, you need to start in a place. And most of the time, people want to start digitally now. But I will also show you starting via phone and other tools with kind of an agentic AI flavor here in a minute. So if I had to come and claim I was hurt, you're going to come through and go to a catalog of services, right? So this is nothing new. We've had service catalog and service catalog items, but now what we've done is instead of just having this around, request a laptop or order a password reset, I've actually built an industry catalog with all of the different types of things that I would do for all the different types of insurance or like the actual functions of the business. So I can actually see a complicated list of different things, and each one of these could be a different workflow that does whatever's necessary to do that. So in this case, we'll just say I'm an injured customer. I can come inside of here, and what we have here is two features. One is the service catalog itself, but the other one is the ability to do what's called staged catalogs, where you actually break these in to multiple steps or multiple stages. Because one of the things about an insurance claim is there's so much data to capture that you need this to be an easy experience, an easy tool. And so right inside of here, you can see all the different tools and all the different screens. Here we're capturing things like injury details. Here we're capturing things like, what was the actual situation at the location. We need to capture things like customer injury information or what the incident was, maybe even go through and attach documents or specific forms or even, the actual picture of the injury itself. All of this is the kind of necessary information to do this first notice of loss, or in workers' comp's case, it's called first report of injury. But what you get out of this is a final service catalog request that comes into the service catalog. We get a claim number, and I now have a single place where all that information that I needed to file is stored on the system. So everything from the doctor invoices to the x-rays to maybe the incident details from the employer, we have a single point of contact. And of course, we can come through and message the customers and get messages back from the customers. Any questions on kind of the idea of using the service portal to do service for people who got hurt, as opposed to all the other ways we've used the service catalog before, John?
I have a question.
Good.
Yeah, so where's the seam between this or potential seam between this and health and safety, where the health and safety app also does similar,
Right?
where patients fall off out of the bed or somebody got electric shock, down in the warehouse, something like that.
Yeah, the differentiator there is in the data model. Capturing this data set in the intake is actually the easiest part of that, just like a workplace safety. What you're going to see in just a second is when I go into the back end of this, we have a very complex adjuster workbench and an indemnification engine and a payments engine. So there's a lot more to this FSO SKU than just saying, yes, I know there's an accident and yes, we logged it. There's the financial aspects of processing a claim as part of this solution as well. And you'll see those in a minute.
Would you say, as a follow-up question, then strategy would be best to have those conversations about the platform and all its products in general, with as a result to what's going to potentially link, right? So if you go down this road, you create all this, but you don't have you don't have a notion of workplace safety, and then you try to bring that in later on, it may be more difficult to connect the dots, or doesn't matter.
It's a great observation, but the reality is because it's all built on ServiceNow, very simple to put the two together. The end of one case management stage or status can be the beginning of another case or activity or task in the system. So it kind of comes down into that last mile configuration. Every insurance company that I've ever worked with, they kind of have different stages, statuses, steps, and some rules about when they start and when they don't start. I've never really seen super clean industry cut points. It's really in the trenches where customers make that decision, but I don't see it as from an architecture and a do perspective. It would be as simple as saying, when this case type of this status gets to this stage, go create a new case type of this status, because it's now fulfilling another part of the business process.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Cool. Right. So that little like service portal intake, we've been doing that for years. Hot topic in financial services is chatbots, Chat GPT, the emergence like conversational interfaces. ServiceNow has been at the leading edge of this for a long time with our conversational interfaces. But if you go to your average insurance company, especially your average public sector insurance company, the odds of him having a chat-based interface to go through and report a claim or get information is pretty low. So industry-wide, while everyone's still trying to figure out how to do this, because ServiceNow is a single platform against the tool, I can actually go through and very simply create complicated chat tools through our virtual agent, our virtual chat designer, and those come through and create the interaction. Once the interaction is created, it can be linked to a customer. In this case here, it's linked to this actual customer. You can see things like their policy premium. These are even data systems that aren't in ServiceNow. But now we have this tool to be able to take kind of the hottest topic in the world, chatbots, and tie it directly into the actual case creation. And then from an audit and security perspective, you know, your most likely point to catch fraud is on this intake, and documenting this intake as perfectly as possible is just a fantastic way to do fraud mitigation. You know, if the person has to record their lie or record their incorrect information, the odds of fraud go down, the odds of you catching the fraud go down. So financially, there's actually some metrics for using these tools that you don't get if you do fax or email or telephone. But really, the tools are all here with whatever channels you want to support, you can do.
Hey, Dustin, there's some questions on the persona. This is not an employee persona. This is more of like an insured customer or an insured constituent.
Oh, great observation. I probably could have been more clear. It actually could be either or, but the general idea here is it's your average entity. They are a customer of ServiceNow who is either a government or an insurance company, and our customer's customer, right, is the individual insured or the employee at the business. Regardless of what persona it is, if I get hurt, I still need to portal to go upload the information. So I would be less concerned about the individual persona. Just think of it as somebody who needs to notify the proper people that an injury has happened so the proper process gets done.
Cool.
And the reason I bring that up is workers' comp is slightly different than, say, auto insurance, which is slightly different than like travel insurance. Every line of business in the insurance industry, whether it's public sector or private sector, has its own nuances. But I like to come back to the capability. Do these people want digital channels to be able to report their information easily?
Awesome.
And the answer to that is absolutely yes.
Okay. Hey, Paul, did that answer your question? Is everybody clear on the persona now?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And then one more, Dustin, before you go. So can you apply Gen AI to spot potential fraud? And I figured you'd get there, but
Hold that thought, because we're actually going to hit that exact scenario in just a second. And we'll walk through agentic AI and Gen AI and skill kit tools in ServiceNow to do things like that in just a second.
thanks.
Okay. One other one. This is kind of a hot one. Hopefully my sound comes through. If it doesn't, you can let me know and I'll narrate. But if you look into the data, even with all the modern tools that people deploy, in an emergency situation, people call people. And so being able to answer the phone is in some cases still 60, 70, 80% of the business. But being able to use AI and modern techniques to do that, as opposed to just having a 22-year-old answer the phone and try to write down as fast as they can, is kind of the name of the game. So I'm going to push play on this video, John, and let me know if the sound comes through. You should hear ringing.
Basic cue.
We hear it.
Hello, you're talking with Dustin Gannon, your claims expert. How can I help?
Hi, I would like to report an injury at work.
I'm sorry to hear that. What seems to be the problem?
One of the other motorcycle officers kind of collided with me when we were on our way to a call.
Goodness. Is everything okay? What happened?
I ended up, well, he hit the right side of my bike, which made leg, and I am going to need surgery on it.
Okay. That does sound like a serious injury, and we are more than happy to help you out with that. Let me go ahead and save your account real quick and create a workers' comp case for you. So hopefully that came through there for you all. My humblest apologies. I'm working here and a loud part just rolled by my office. But what you should have heard is an interaction between a person at the claims entity and somebody who needed help. The thing that I want to take away here is historically, this is lost data in almost every institution. The words that are said and why things are said. I mean, that's the most important point to find fraud. And in ServiceNow, with tools like Amazon Connect and the ability to transcribe and use generative data, we can actually store this conversation with this claim forever and even have what's called transcription, attribution, and sentiment analysis on this. Now, for those that are more interested in just platform, you can actually do this with any type of case in the entire system. We just know that this is hyper valuable in this one specific line of business, which is why it got configured here. But imagine you did this for benefits requests, IT tickets, the ability to have this data and then the ability to feed this data into generative AI tools becomes a new way to create value, a new way to kind of solve the problem of helping the customer as fast as possible. So I'll pause here. The idea is, can you use telecom and telephony to create the data to necessarily structure or create interactions and claims? The absolute answer is yes, but I'm open to conversations on this point as well if anyone would like to talk to it.
Is anybody using this today? No, no questions.
Yeah, like this is my perfect example. Did you all know this is 3 years old in ServiceNow? Right? So the takeaway, the homework assignment, if you will. Now, granted, there is software that needs to be correctly licensed from both ServiceNow as well as other companies. But if the business outcome you're chasing is to increase the net promoter score of customers, or to do something like take a complex conversation and turn it into a complex type of work, I've never seen a better tool in my career to take all this data, flood it into a case, even do things like prediction or sentiment analysis, and to put it to the right person at the right time, right in the platform. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, just the ability to get the right information to the right person is just so critical, right? We want to come through and store this in the platform. And that's where we actually get into the case itself. So one of the things that has been a standard feature in ServiceNow for a million years is our knowledge articles. And actually, we've done a tremendous amount of knowledge article enhancement over the last 2 years. From things like AI search that can read knowledge articles, not just in ServiceNow, but in other systems like SharePoint or file systems or document repositories, to doing things like search and actually finding the right document to explain the exact right thing to the person when they need it. There's a really rich set of tools to basically make people brilliant in the moment. And the cool thing about this is a platform capability. Like if you own ServiceNow, you have this capability, but it's underutilized by a lot of people. Like I know the average customer I talk to, when it comes to knowledge articles, there's always a, we wish they were better. And we can take it as a sidebar, but with generative AI, there's some really amazing ways you can go in and clean up knowledge articles that you never could do before. But I like to come back to, are you creating value? When a case or a claim gets assigned to somebody, is the exact right SOP, is the exact right checklist shown to that person as the first entity? If it's not, we need to revisit our AI search. We need to revisit our knowledge articles and improve that, because you can take your ability to do the job or the ability to make the job easier so that you're not losing people due to frustrations or retention so much better on ServiceNow with this tool, right? And then there's a whole bunch of other things you can do with this, with things like recommended actions and all the kind of predictive intelligence tools. But just getting your knowledge article right will take you from kind of average to great in my experience. Okay. And then the sister part of this is actually the if you're not familiar with playbooks, playbooks are the ability for you to take a case and actually have it be structured in a very complicated way. 8 steps, 10 steps, 20 steps, 100 steps, 200 steps, with all of these things being done in the right way, the right order, and the right process. This feature here is really just, it's a mission critical feature for complex workflows like claims. It's not used a lot because it wasn't in the platform up until just about 2 years ago. But it's a foundational feature. It doesn't cost any extra, and you can attach this to any case type in the system. And then I'll show you how to build these playbooks in a little bit. because it really is a great way to get your average person to be able to do complex work without having to be a 20-year expert to do these things. Questions on Playbooks, John? Anything in the chat there?
No, in the chat, if you could just put down if you're using Playbooks or not yet, that'd be useful. We're just wondering how many people are using these today, and I didn't get time to put a survey in there.
Yeah, we'd love to know. And if you're not, there's phenomenal from our platform team and our YouTube team, there's phenomenal videos on how to use Playbooks and how to put them into your instance. And again, you already own this. Everyone on this call has access to Playbooks. So go through and make it valuable and take advantage of it. It is a great way to improve the kind of viability of everybody on the platform. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and get over here to another screen real quick. And let's take a claim.
And one thing on here Bernie mentioned is Playbooks for portal intake. And we're using some of that in government for eligibility. So as you go through those steps, like Dustin was doing on the form, you could actually run a decision matrix and then decide on what questions you ask next based on how they answered the previous question. So that just came out in a recent release.
Yeah, there's some decision support systems. You can also do things like our decision tables is a really good tool. And then remember that at every step along the way, we can also run flows. So for a good example is when I add a claim participant, oftentimes I have to do something like a know your customer fact check or even create another workflow in the system. So don't think of this as like one playbook that has to rule everything. You can still run other business processes off these things, but you basically have a way to make it easy for a person who just joined the company to know how to do the job. And that is so huge in these types of industries where you have turnover and you deal with things like, regulatory change. Like if I need to rearrange these steps because the state of Nevada says you have to do this step first, what better way to deliver on that and show an auditor that you've made that change in the platform? Okay. All right, one more second here.
I have a really good question on here that I think we can. So Zach is asking, how does this work with the government service data model? I don't know if you want to take a first shot at that, Dustin, or you want me to answer it.
Yeah, well, why don't you take a crack at that one since it's been a hot topic you and I have basically been working hands on with, but I'd love to get your take and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, this is the beauty of the platform. So I put the claims model in there earlier. I put a screenshot of that in there. But this is the beauty of the platform, that you're in one database and those models are shared. So you can easily bring in the model. It still has the consumer that's consuming it, right? That's the constituent in the case of government. But instead of using a social benefit model or a licensing and permitting model, we switch over and use the claims model. So this is where you get the value of the platform, where we can bring other industry models in to government use cases. This is a real popular one for us, and so is telco. So in government, for example, we do, governments do a lot of circuit distribution. So they create these telco packages. It's not uncommon for us to be fishing from other data models, especially in government, because a lot of people call it the industry of industries, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm very pleased to announce that the architecture of this is very compatible between modules. You can totally run IT, HR, CSM, or what we're now calling CRM, for government, CRM for financial services, all in the same instance. They don't have collisions. They don't step on their toes. From an architecture perspective, there are sister elements in the data model. So even if you save like an updated phone number and you're using the financial services model, that would update the phone number if you were using the PSDS model as well. So some really kind of nice tools in the platform to avoid technical debt that we all want to avoid. Okay. Coming into some of the other ones, this is where we're going to get into a little more of the agentic AI and just AI conversations itself. first and foremost, you'll see right up here, we call these UI actions on the platform. I want to cover these kind of in the right order. There is tools to do task intelligence, which will create a sentiment analysis of individual case type. And it does that based upon the fields inside of the actual record itself, so that you can see, is this person unhappy? Is this person happy? And are they getting better? So that's not generative AI, that's traditional AI, but using task intelligence is a way to go through and kind of do something that you haven't really seen in the industry. And then the other type of intelligence in the platform, and again, this is not generative AI, is called document intelligence. And I wanted to show an example of this because it's such a cool capability that everyone should be using this in the platform if you're not already. So in document intelligence, you can come through and specify a use case, and it's very easy to create these use cases. You give it a name, an address. You can use these tools in multiple languages. And then once you define a document intelligence, right? So let me go ahead and grab one that I have here with some data, right? So I've been using the DL for claims one the most. Let me go over here. And what you can see here is this tool itself, basically you can send faxes, forms, email attachments, whatever you want into it. And what it allows you to do is to come through and use an AI model to process the values on a document, even though it's not in a structured way, right? So let me go grab us an example that I had working prior to this. Sorry, guys. Okay, there we go. So what we'll see inside of here is somebody attached this form. We don't even really care where it came from. It could come from an email, could have come from a fax, could have come from an attachment in an email. But the point is, to process this claim, I have all these values that I have to lift out of this paperwork. And in something like claims processing, you don't get to just structure this form. Like, this form comes from the doctor, and every doctor does it differently. So this agentic AI model allows you to come through inside here, and it will create an AI model for you and essentially build you a machine learning algorithm to train where the field is at and allow you to build a human in the loop verification, but also go through and digitize any part of a transaction. So my ask for you all is, if anyone has too much paper in their enterprise, document intelligence is a tool that can essentially allow you to automate up to 100% of the work. And the tool the thing that I really love is it couldn't be easier to use. You literally come inside of here on any individual document. You can see how each field is performing from an AI modeling perspective, how many fields are doing it, and then it actually learns over time. So as people clean the data up, like let's say I went in there and I typed in a field that didn't come in correctly, or let's say we decided to go in and make a change to the autofill threshold. The more people who use this, the better it gets. There's no extra complexity. In a world where AI models tend to be like the mystic arts to try and get them into the tools that are there, document intelligence, silver bullet. This just solves problems in the instance, and it's trivially easy to set up. Any questions on this one, John? Going once, going twice. Hopefully I'm still on the phone.
You are.
Okay, good. All right. So kind of bringing this out to some of the other features that you'll see in the platform. We'll go ahead and give you a few examples. Let me go and pull my the instance I wanted here for this. And we'll get, okay.
Hey,
So somebody,
Dustin, sorry, got a quick question about document intelligence that you shared about. This is not
Sure.
to, by the way, my
Yeah,
question
fire
is,
away.
you said we can pull in some of those information that is from those documents, right? Will it create a new record and update that, or how does that agent AI works on that one?
Yeah, so the document intelligence tool itself,
Mm-hmm.
when you define a document task, or excuse me, what you do is you define the fields that you want. And this is
Right.
really simple. You literally come in here and say, I want to grab a single field, a checkbox, a table of fields, or a single field group. And then it builds the AI model based upon iterations. So once you train it about 10 times, you get a predictive algorithm. Once you train it to run a couple hundred through there, that's where you get to like your 80, 90%.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of these have an integration tool. And guess what this does? It gives you a flow directly behind the scenes for how you want to handle the data and where you want to store it in the database. So you can go through and just make a direct table mapping, like this field goes directly to here, or you can use an integration and then you can do anything that you can do in the system with a flow.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Great question. I'm going to come back to the agent workspace. A lot of people are asking about AI agents and AI tools. The big one for Now Assist out of the Xanadu release was the ability to do case summarization. But if you're not familiar with Now Assist, we've actually extended the case summarization. And instead of just reading the notes, which is what the first version did, if you look at the data model, we have a whole bunch of complex things in here. You've got people with, properties and incidents and people and all sorts of stuff. And in this platform, we can now come through and click summarize, and it reads that complicated knowledge graph and gives the perfect summarization for the perfect person right there. So if you look in financial services, if it's a serious claim, the average hold time might be 5, 8, 10, 15 minutes. Like imagine somebody who had, an injury or a fatality, and there's like 4 people involved and 2 lawyers and 5 doctors. Trying to get the right information to be able to answer the customer is really hard. So something like AI summarization on a claim could save you 15 minutes per phone call. And that's a huge, huge, huge time saver from an ROI perspective. The other thing I like to point out is we are ServiceNow. That means we're a global company. And all of these tools, if we come over here and go to my preferences, on this particular instance, I have 2 languages enabled, English and Japanese. But one of the really cool features of this is that our generative AI not only goes through the capabilities of doing things like summarization, it actually can go through its translation engine as well. So we can deliver summarization of an entire claim file that was in English to a person who maybe speaks Japanese, or the vice versa is, can we summarize a complex case record in Japanese and deliver it back to a person in English? So this is another, if you're a multinational or a company that deals with multiple languages in multiple countries, just a killer feature to show. So we'll give this a second to reload. Sorry there. And now you guys get to see my Japanese skills here, which are still developing.
You speaking it yet? You've been down there enough.
Yeah, right. Okay, so the claim is loading, and you'll see right here, Now Assist summary. There you go. So in this particular case, we're helping a large multinational. They have offices in Japan and the US, and they trade work between the two to do 24/7. So something like this, mission critical feature. And then for those that aren't familiar, we also have the human in the loop. So once you do a summary, you can come through and actually write that summary into the notes or into the information. So just like that, I now am actually logging notes in Japanese to this particular claim. Okay. I'm going to go back to Japanese. Hopefully I remember how to click the buttons. And then we'll come to just one or two of the other kind of cool features I have in the platform. And again, the cool thing about all this is this is all just ServiceNow. Even though our domain is insurance claims, and it might be applicable to private sector, public sector, for-profit, non-for-profit, everything here is actually just ServiceNow, right? So I like to come in and show my last feature here. And this feature is called process mining. Excuse me, where's my process mining instance? Give me a second, John. I need to, here we go. Okay. Humblest apologies. I've lost track of all my, here we go. Okay. So you should see basically a giant graph. Okay. If you're not familiar with this feature, process mining is a feature. It actually has, in most customers' instances, 4,000 free records that you can mine. I think it's either 4,000 or 2,000. And what it allows you to do is to see not just a report like tables and rows, but you can actually see how individual transactions have happened. So I can actually come into here and see, hey, these that came through the portal went through this specific path. And what's really, really powerful about this is I'm just going to clear this out, is highly complicated data can be shown in incredibly detailed ways. So something like an insurance claim that might have hundreds and hundreds of deviations and thousands of different paths can all be clearly and easily shown to an end process owner or somebody who needs to go through and fix this. And then this is really where I like to kind of come into here, because we can actually timestamp these. So I can come through and say, hey, here's what the process is today. And I can come through and stamp it, because the last cool feature of the whole platform is now that we have generative AI tools. Let me find my process mining tool. Here we go. If you're going to start using ServiceNow to do this, you're going to want to start fixing things, right? So if I can mine a process and say, here's how the work is broken, stuck, or needs to be fixed. Well, with Now Assist and our AI agent that builds workflows, I can come through and give a better process to the system. And I'll go ahead and copy this, and we'll give it a refresh. But you're basically just a couple clicks and a good prompt away from redeploying that playbook or remodifying or updating that playbook and giving a new business process to something that was old in the platform. So just to give you some experience in the 200 plus claims modernizations and insurance transformations I've done, your average like process reengineering part might be months worth of work, you know, sometimes potentially even a year of studying a process. Right. And the newest feature is you can actually take a picture of a flow chart and do it. But I'm just going to go ahead and use the generative AI tool. And what this is going to do is take my prompt, right? And I wrote this prompt out prior to it, but it's nothing crazy. It's, you know, I went and interviewed a couple business users. I fed their interviews to ChatGPT and had them kind of create a summary for me. So now I've got an idea of what should happen. And now ServiceNow Assist, which is an AI agent in the platform for creating business processes, can come through and build me the outline of this. And within 60 seconds, I now go back to the business itself and say, hey, did I get the requirements gathering process correct here, or do I need to go back and tweak something? So we'll give it another minute here to finish up. But the two tools of mining and generative AI, I think, are like lightsabers for your average financial services company. Like no one is used to using tools that are this light, this fast, and this effective. And in a world where we're all trying to do more with less, I can't help but think that a tool like this would allow you to get 10x more work and get the work done and out the door quicker. Okay. We'll give it a refresh here. I might not have clicked the button correctly. Okay. Like all good live demos, we will, especially generative AI demos, the AI gods have to be smiling on us for it to work. But this is production on the Yokohama release that is forthcoming. So we'll get you a version of it if it fails here.
Microsoft just released their first quantum chip, so that should be taken care of next year.
Right. So on that note, guys, I'll check on that in a second, but I want to just come back to that original diagram. When you face a complicated process in an organization, there has historically been, like, ServiceNow is a tool for simple help desk things, request, fulfill. We are seeing a massive amount of large companies take some of the most tricky problems in their space and use tools like ServiceNow's capabilities to orchestrate the entire thing. And whether it starts in, we just need a digital channel, whether it's a chatbot or a portal, or things like an email intake tool, whether we need to organize and assign the work better, whether we need to get rid of paper, whether we need to put it all in a single screen and give things like generative AI agents to summarize work. We didn't spend a ton of time on the mobile app, but everything you can do in the agent workspace, you can do in the mobile app. And then how do you organize and manage it? And then how do you go through and fix it? There's really not a business process in my career. I haven't seen that this kind of capability approach doesn't create some pretty quick value for. And really the whole goal, and why I think John and I are on this call, is there's two things going on. One is, can you fix this problem faster? But the other one is, now that we can fix this problem, John and I are working on this agentic AI to actually create all the assets that you see on the screen.
Yep.
So that you don't have to spend, 40, 60, 80, 100 hours figuring out how to configure a portal, or figuring out how to configure a playbook, or figuring out how to configure this. Can an AI agent actually do the implementation of a complex process? So we have it out of the box, but I also think you'll see a ton of work on how can we short circuit the amount of time it takes to make these things happen. But every capability you see here, you can do live on either Xanadu or the upcoming Yokohama. And we have many customers essentially ready to go using this today. And it's been a pleasure to be here. So I'll open it for Q&A. We can take any questions you guys have. And thank you.
Anybody want to come off mute with questions? There's nothing in the chat right now. If anybody wants to come off mute, feel free.
There's nothing in the chat because we're in awe.
Well, that's the coolest thing I've heard today. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple mentions of that on the chat as we're going. Dustin, like a couple comments I didn't bring up, but I'll send it over to you so you can.
Yeah, if you could find me on LinkedIn for anybody who's here, Dustin Gannon. I list myself as an AI insider because just the world's changing so fast. It's kind of like, how do you use AI to make things faster? And I mean, you saw examples of it here today, but I'm more than happy to make friends. And it's a big world with a whole bunch of broken systems. Let's go fix them.
There you go.
Hey, could you mention or clarify what you can do with process mining? You said there's some number of quantities that's included, and the other or over that would be additional, I guess, subscription.
Yeah,
what can you do with what's included, I guess, as a base?
Let's nail two things down. One, process mining used to only work on case service. Now that has changed. As of now, you can log files. You do have to manipulate them a little bit, but you can upload log files into ServiceNow to get those process diagrams, even if the business process doesn't run on ServiceNow. That's called external process mining in the plugins. But what that means is if you have that license, there's actually no limit. But from what I understand, everyone can run a certain number of those for free. It's called a sample mine in an instance today. And we'll get you maybe John, unless you know off the top of your head, we'll get the actual numbers, so I'm not guessing. But I know there is a certain number of executions that you can run before it has a cost implication.
Thank you. There's no more questions for Dustin. I'll show a quick few things here that can show you where, kind of give you more data on those questions asked earlier, and then also show you where Dustin and I are working together, because this cross-industry sharing is really valuable for us internally. So somebody asked later, before, about the government data model. So the way I like to look at the model is, like, we give you the starting point on the products, but usually you're extending that. We give you the starting point on the cases, but usually you're extending that. And then the same thing on the consumer provider side, like, who are the customers? So you are able to use a constituent because it extends the consumer table on the data model that Dustin showed you. And as you know, you've been in ServiceNow. As you pick up these data models, you get all of the scripts and all of the workflows and all of the things that come along with that base case. So in this case, a government service case extends into a license and permit model, right? Or an information request model. Now, if you go on the financial and you go into the claims case, right, we have a couple different things that we don't need in government, right? Like, for example, an insurance policy, right? What's the policy? And then down the bottom, what are our case types? The same in government, right? It's just a different type of case that government doesn't have. And then over here, the sold product is basically the same. Like, it's just an entitlement to that policy. And then over here, adding participants, like Dustin was showing us, doctors and lawyers and different people that are part of that claim. Right? So there's a lot of other things that come into the model because of the richness of the claim transaction. So if you go into our instance, if you have the shared instance, you can start to look at some of the data structures on here. I just pulled the schema into here so you can see it a little bit, but just we're coming up from CAS, coming up the case, right? Then the financial services, just like the public sector model would be licensing and permitting at this point on a government service case. We're just using this part of the model now instead to have more of this done out of the box for you. Okay, now I want to go back to one of Mike's questions earlier. This is something that was born in the Digital Services Forum, right? It's the factory, and this is what Dustin's working on with me now. But basically what we do is we're able to go, and you can run this on a Digital Services Forum instance. You submit a request for a new product and you say, hey, this is a claim, or this is a license and permit, or this is, and we'll be able to come down and create all your test users for you. After we create all the test users, we're building the actual product up here. Then we're going to build the common service data model. And then after we build the common service data model, we're also going to build the industry model. You said you wanted a claims application or a claims product. We're building you a claims product. We're putting it in the right data model for you. So this is what Dustin was talking about. A lot of this stuff that we're usually having to do manually, we want to give you a prototype in less than 10 minutes is the idea, right? So that we can get you a working prototype with a lot of the base features in there. And then at the end, what happens is the agents kick in and they can actually help you build your playbook. So this is the part we're working on now, is how does an agentic agent come in and ask you questions and build that first playbook out for you, on top of what you've already have here, the right data model and the right structure and the right test users. So that's what we've been working on. I don't have time for a full demo today, but I'll show you real quick what I'm going to push into the model. So if you come into the digital factory and you go into the digital factory, the factory itself is generic, but now what we're doing is doing the other models on top of it. So here you'll see a digital product factory for insurance, right? Or claims, whatever I end up naming it. And you'll be able to kick off that workflow I showed you by going here and picking out insurance program with claim template. And then I could put in my name, right? And then once I fire this off, it's going to work in building that product out for me. So it's building, Mike, to your point earlier, it's building the common service data model part, and it's building the industry model part called My Claim. So it's building that product out for you. And then if I have other things on here that I would run as part of that claims program, like I might have add my doctors, right? I might have another form. Well, what's going to happen here is AI is going to build this out for me as part of my product, as part of my claim product. Then when I submit this, it's basically going through that workflow. It's doing the same thing like we did for government on a couple calls ago. Now it's building the apps, creating my users. So it's doing all this behind the scenes. It's calling my AI agents to help. And then at the end, it'll call another AI agent, add a band to bring you into a playbook editor and help you edit that playbook. Like Dustin was showing you earlier that you would go to manually. So there's a lot going on here because AI just opens up this whole world of stuff and all of our heads are exploding, right? But building this out so that it's not so difficult to get to where Dustin showed you in the demo today, this is kind of the other side of the coin that we're working on and using AI for. So I'll get more of that in the instance along with some little demos so you can try some of these templates. And we're actually excited. We're bringing it to one of our customers. I don't know if they're on the call today, so I won't mention them. But we're actually bringing this out to do a trial, and we're going to let non-developers use this platform to go ahead and build out some of their needs, right, in terms of services. So we're going to do this in higher ed first, but this is one that would be done on claims. So lots going on here. I know probably flooded your heads today, but if there's any questions, I'm available offline. We'll go ahead and paste this recording as usual. It'll be in our forum by Friday. And Dustin, thanks so much for jumping on, man. That was an awesome demo. I picked up a lot of things too. I appreciate that.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime. I'd love to be back as a guest and as we make progress on this AI thing too. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. See you in a few weeks.